Hello and welcome to our Substack broadcast today. Thank you for joining us. And today we want to talk about a case that's really been quite egregious. It happened last month. And this is the case of Saba Poursaeedi. Now, Saba is a Reform candidate and he is a member of the Reform Party. Now, what that means for our non-UK listeners is Reform is currently the party that Nigel Farage has been leads and is currently sitting second in some polls, joint first in other polls, and is actually leading the Labour government in others. They're supported by about 25% of voters at the moment. We're not talking about a minor fringe party here. Anyway, the news here is that Saba, who'd been working for a housing association called the Hightown Housing Association, which is based in Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire area. Saba had been working at this housing association and he effectively ended up getting fired because the managers of the housing association didn't like the fact that he was, first of all, an activist for the Reform Party, and secondly, that he'd stood as a candidate for the Reform Party in the general election. Apparently, the Reform Party's values don't align with the housing association's values. So this was first published by the Telegraph, and the Free Speech Union picked up on this. And what I wanted to do is just rattle through an article that the Free Speech Union published based on the Telegraph one, of which we've also shared on our Substack. Saba is currently fundraising to fight in an employment tribunal. He's suing the Housing Association. If you can afford to donate to his fund, please do. I'll put a link down below. This has caused a lot of anger in the UK. In the last, this has only been live for about a week, this story, and in under a week, Saba has raised over £22,000 to hit his target of 28,000, at which point he will sue the housing association. There's links to the Free Speech Union and to that fund below. So imagine this: you're a family of Imagine this, you're a father of a young family and you're the main breadwinner. You're a serious person. You've worked hard for your success, both in your professional life and your private life, where you're a valued member of a mainstream political party in the United Kingdom. In fact, you're a potential parliamentary candidate for that party. You've just completed your probation period for your dream job, and your immediate manager couldn't be more fulsome in his praise. He's done himself and the team proud, he says, and you're rightly proud. You call your wife to tell her. That £37,000 salary and the benefits will make a huge difference to your life, especially with a toddler to care for and a newborn baby due to arrive. Then, just as you settle down to work again, you get called in for a chat by one of your directors and the head of human resources, only to be told that you won't be appointed to the permanent role after all. The reason? Because you're a member of the Reform Party. And this is what happened to Saba Poursaeedi when he was working at the Hightown Housing Association. This is the summary from the Free Speech Union based on an article in the Telegraph. I'll put links to both below. Mr. Poursaeedi was dismissed as resident involvement officer after the Charitable Housing Association told him Reform's policies on immigration, net zero and housing were in direct conflict with its own values. Hightown Housing Association has denied Mr. Poursaeedi was sacked for his political views, but has admitted his position with Reform was not compatible with a customer-facing role. Hightown held up as evidence a racist cartoon from the Telegraph newspaper, which Mr. Poursaeedi had retweeted. This cartoon was by Matt Pritchard, and it was published in January last year. And it depicts a housewife wearing a burqa in a sideswipe at the prospect of Abu Dhabi purchasing the Telegraph amid concerns over the human rights violations of that Gulf state and, ironically, how that Gulf state treats women. There's never been any previous suggestion that the cartoon in itself is racist from anybody, while Matt is an award-winning Telegraph cartoonist and he's widely recognised for his gentle perspective on British life. Mr. Poursaeedi claims he was also refused a second job as a damp and mould inspector because of his links to the party led by Nigel Farage. Mr. Poursaeedi told the Telegraph, "I was politically purged. I want this to go through the courts because I want Hightown to be presented with a court judgment that says you were wrong. Mr. Poursaeedi, 36, whose father is Iranian, said, "Everybody is feeling a noose around their necks in terms of what they can and can't say. I find it's happened to me. It's so absurd, so insane. This is their mentality, and you can't quite believe it." Mr. Farage told The Telegraph, "The levels of prejudice in our public and private and charitable sectors against anyone with patriotic views, like this man losing his job, are staggering. Hopefully the UK will follow America, where woke is dying very quickly." He said the case had similarities with his ordeal at the hands of Coutts, the private bank owned by NatWest, which decided to shut down his account after compiling a dossier on his political views. Toby Young, founder of the Free Speech Union, the campaign group funding Mr. Poursaeidi's legal claim, said, "Saba has been subjected to a political witch hunt. Being an organiser for reform, a party that 1 in 5 Britons say they'll vote for at the next election, should not be a reason to deprive someone of their livelihood. It's particularly egregious when you factor that Hightown doesn't have a problem with employing Labour Party organisers. Hightown should be encouraging its employees to get involved in democratic politics, not punishing them for it." Mr. Poursaeedi from Hemel Hempstead, Hertfordshire, began working for Hightown in October 2023, working part-time as a maternity cover on a salary of a little over £15,000. In February last year, he took a permanent job as Resident Involvement Officer on a £37,000 salary, and on March the 12th, he voluntarily disclosed he was Reform's prospective parliamentary candidate for Harpenden and Berkhamsted, as well as the party's county coordinator, a voluntary role which he carries out for free. 2 weeks later, on the March 26th, Mr. Poursaeedi passed his probationary period for his maternity cover role with glowing praise. His manager wrote, "He has done himself and the team proud, only to be told hours later the permanent job offer of Resident Involvement Officer had been withdrawn." In filings with the Employment Tribunal, lawyers for Mr. Poursaeedi said he was requested to attend a meeting with Natalie Sturrock, Hightown's Director of Housing, and Kerry Demner, its Head of Human Resources. According to the legal claim, Ms. Sturrock informed him that his activities and public profile with the political party Reform gave rise to a conflict of interest with the work he would be doing as a Resident Involvement Officer. According to his legal case, Ms. Sturrock claimed that the policies the claimant would be campaigning for would be in direct conflict with Hightown's values. She then went on to give 3 examples. According to the legal case, Ms. Sturrock said that Reform's anti-immigration policies were incompatible with Hightown's, which houses immigrants and supports refugees, that Reform's plan to scrap net zero policies was in direct contravention of Hightown's desire to be a net zero company, while on the Greenbelt, Reform wants to preserve it, whereas Hightown wants to build on it. Ms. Sturrock allegedly told Mr. Poursaeedi. Of the meeting, Mr. Poursaeedi said, "I couldn't breathe. I was completely speechless. My world fell apart. I was completely blindsided. While the job was on the table, I had financial stability and the chance of earning some proper money, and then it was all gone. I felt like I was being crushed. I was incredibly emotional, and I was breaking down in tears." According to the legal documents, Hightown then informed Mr. Poursaeedi that he was now only eligible to apply for roles that were not public-facing. So on the 4th of April the 4th, Ms. Demner, the head of HR, wrote to him confirming the offer at the job had been withdrawn because "we have been unable to approve your declaration of interest." After the job offer was withdrawn, Mr. Poursaeedi applied for a number of other jobs with Hightown, needing the money with a toddler and his wife heavily pregnant with their second child. He discovered his role with Reform meant he was unsuitable for a job as a damp and mould inspector with Hightown. Mr. Poursaeedi said the Housing Association took him to one side and told him, "Because of your Reform affiliations, the role of damp and mould inspector is also off limits." Mr. Poursaeedi launched his legal action because his philosophical beliefs were protected under the Equality Act. In his legal claim, he said he was a victim of belief discrimination over his views, which include prioritising economic freedom, national sovereignty, and environmental conservation. His lawyers accused Hightown of discrimination because they had treated him and his beliefs as inferior and unworthy of respect in a democracy. Mr. Poursaeidi's lawyers also accused Hightown of harassment by creating an intimidating, hostile, and degrading, humiliating, offensive environment for him. His lawyers said that Hightown's head of governance and his company's secretary, Trudy Clenthouse, had stood as Labour Party councillor in a local ward in 2019 and was now a Labour ward representative in Dunstable. Mr. Poursaeidi accused the Housing Association of operating double standards. So thanks to Freddie Attenborough of the Free Speech Union for highlighting this article in the Telegraph. My comments on this. As an HR professional myself, I don't think I've ever come across a more egregious example of employer overreach in my 30-year career. The management team here at the Housing Association, specifically Natalie Sturrock and the head of people, that's Newspeak for HR Director, Kerry Demner, appear to have convinced themselves that Reform, a party that's polling at 25% of the polls at the moment and leading Labour Party in some polls, are so reprehensible they simply cannot entertain working with a colleague who is a candidate for that party. I can only imagine the Liberal left confirmation bias bubble Sturrock and Demner live in. Now, whilst political beliefs aren't specifically protected by the Equality Act 2010, this case may well end up with them being so. We have had several cases and tribunals over the last couple of years, most famously about gender-critical beliefs, where a belief has become protected as a result of a successful case being presented. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we end up with that as a ruling. If not, we are then heading to a very dark place as a nation. Imagine being in a country where, in order to secure your employment, you would have to agree to the politics and the beliefs and the opinions of your employer. Is that somewhere where we really want to be? I'd also add another point here, which is Hightown Housing Association is part funded by the taxpayer. Now, with Reform polling at 25%, that's a quarter of taxpayers who are people who Hightown Housing Association wouldn't count as working with, but they're happy to take their money. So it's one thing for a self-funded, privately owned business to pull a stunt like this. I wouldn't approve of it, but it's a private business. It's their own money. But it's quite another thing for an organisation that relies on taxpayer funding to exist. So we're going to be watching this one very closely indeed. In the meantime, if you can help Mr. Poursaeedi fund his campaign against the Housing Association, there'll be a link down below. So thank you for watching the podcast today. Sack for Wrongthink was founded to give a voice to people who have been cancelled or fired in the UK simply because they hold opinions other people don't like. If you can afford to donate and subscribe to us, then there's a link down below for our Substack. In the meantime, if you can't afford to do that or don't want to donate, then please be very grateful if you could like and share this video and also follow us on social media. Thank you.